Hillary, the stage is yours.
This one. I am a child, one of 6, and as a child, my mom always told me that I spoke too loudly, and I was always called in class. If kids were talking, they'd say, Hillary. So I'm going to try and use that to my advantage today. Can you hear me? Yeah. That's my Sophia. As you can see by my husband Luke's hand, she was super teeny. I wrote my talk, my speech, because it was only a year ago. And still, it's difficult to talk about at times, and that's why I'm here. Because people say that a baby under 24 weeks is just a fetus. My Sophia had a beautiful, strong, vibrant spirit, and she wasn't just a fetus. Representative Curtis, your mom's a wise woman. As I was sitting there, as I was marching, I got to get to know some people, and a sweet mom of 4, like myself, Breon, brought to mind, I know that I wasn't going to tell you until the end, my Sophia passed away at 13 days old. She's my guardian angel. And Breon made a very important point that not only is Sophia here with us, but those 3,200 infants who were not given a chance at life are here as our guardian angels as well. We are marching for them. I wanted to tell a little bit of my story. I didn't bring a tissue because my plan was to not cry. Because my Sophie was a strong, vibrant spirit, and I want to convey that in my speech. On September 6, 2017, I went in for a repeat 20-week scan. I was 22 weeks, 5 days old. Some of you in the medical profession are going to recognize why these days are important. When I went in, the nurse said I was so excited to see this baby. My husband and I have 3 children that are 14, 11, and 8. And in 2008, we knew we were going to have a baby girl and that we would call her Sophie. And some things complicated that. And so nearly a decade later, she was coming. With my geriatric age as a mother, I was able to find out that it was in fact our baby Sophia at 12 weeks. And I was elated. I was so excited that I was throwing up several times. I have difficult pregnancies, but I knew that I would bring home my baby and we would have our Sophia join us. So at this repeat scan, they were taking my vitals, and the nurse said, your blood pressure is 180 over 100. Embarrassingly, I didn't know how high that was. I've never had hypertension, never had preeclampsia with any of my previous pregnancies, and I could tell she was concerned. My doctor wasn't there, but he called me pretty soon after, and he's a very calm man. But 3 or 4 times in the space of a 5-minute conversation, he said, "I'm very concerned." And throughout this whole experience, God was at the helm, and I know that He protected me because I didn't know how scary it was. And He said, "I want you to come in Friday." This was Wednesday, and He said, "I want you to come in Friday. We open at 9:30, but I want you in my office as soon as you can get there." And I said, "Okay." And my husband went out of town Friday morning for a weekend conference. And so I asked my mom to come with me because I was a little concerned. I was concerned enough that I didn't sleep at all the night before. But I still had no idea what was coming. I got to the hospital, and within a minute of me sitting down, my kind doctor, who knew very well what 23 weeks meant and why he didn't ask me to come in the next day, because at 23 weeks, if I had come in the day before, that I wouldn't have had the ability. 23 weeks is the cutoff where they try to resuscitate. If I had come, I didn't know this at the time, but in hindsight, I did all the math. So he sat down within a minute. He took my hand and he said, "You're not going to like this, but I'm admitting you." And he was in clinics and he had to go to all of his appointments. And I was in shock. And I didn't know it was coming. And I don't remember making it to the labor and delivery ward, but I do remember all of the on-site OB specialists in and out of my room prepping me for an emergency C-section. And I knew that my baby, her chance of survival was really, really slim. I had been very sick during the pregnancy, like I said, and my husband had given me several blessings. The blessing that I got Wednesday morning, in that blessing, God promised me that she would be born strong and healthy. So we decided to wait. All of those doctors were visibly and verbally upset at our decision because my blood pressure got up to 225/120. After the delivery, when I would go and visit the hospital, one of the nurses, we did make it 50 hours. So I got those shots. You know that at 48 hours, those steroid shots gives a baby so much greater chance for their lung survival. But one of those nurses, she said very seriously to me, one of the times I was visiting the NICU, she said, "You are lucky to be alive." But I was willing to put my life in the balance because I love my children. This folder on purpose to carry my papers. I know only the front of you can see this, but there's this is a sketch by my son when he was like 2 months old, and I saw it when I was walking, and it's a reminder of the innocence and the beauty of our children. So back to my story though, we made that choice. We made it the 48 hours. And she was born strong and healthy.
Working our agreement. Yeah, so we'll do just a one visit exception and then just for them to come back in.
How old are you?
7, 10, and 13.
One of the doctors in the NICU said that in his 35 years experience, this was the healthiest micropreemie he had ever given birth to. Her lungs weren't fully developed, but you saw her chest panting. She kept blowing everybody away with all the progress that she was making. She was a fighter. So those of you that know medical terms, her APGAR score was a 9 a minute after she was born. That's about the highest score you can get for a healthy full-term baby. She had no brain bleeds, which means a stroke, and those often happen with our micropreemies. She had no problems. I use social media a lot. My husband's a farmer. We run a farm, a small business, and I promote that. And so I had reached out to my community, and everyone was praying and fasting with us. Before I knew that Wednesday night, I reached out and I said that I love the good that social media can do. And I asked all of my friends for prayers. And Sophie, her story spread beyond my friends. We got messages from people from New Zealand to Wales to Armenia to France, and so many people, including our friends, saying that Sophie had changed their life. That one lady in particular sent me a message and she said, I had lost my faith. And she said, reading this story, my faith has returned. This is one of our favorite pictures. Sophie was feisty. I shared that I was speaking at March for Life, and both of our primary nurses commented, and they're like, I remember our Sophia. Her doctor, Sabrina, talked about how she'd push away. Her arms are always, we'll show the next slide. This shows her progress. This was at birth on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, 1 week old. She just was making amazing progress. And then the next one, so she'd always throw her arms up when they would come and try and poke her. And she said, and Sabrina, her doctor said, but there was one sweet time that she put her little dime-sized stethoscope over her heart, and Sophie covered it with her hand. She was feisty and powerful in all the right ways. I'm wanting to make sure that I cover everything, but I've gone off the top. So she was in the hospital for 4 days after I was in the hospital with her for 4 days after my C-section. With micropreemies, because they're so small and she weighed less than a pound, they keep her isolette covered, and the nurses, they would call it cares, and they only did it every 6 hours. I was used to my 3 previous babies. I was blessed to be able to breastfeed, and so I was used to being able to take care of their every need. It was so hard for me to have to leave her in the hospital, but I had God was in that as well. We had amazing people who loved her, who still love her. One of her primary care nurses, because babies in the NICU, they will often crash. And one of her primary care nurses, on her last day when she had this bacteria, she came back in when we were still in the hospital, and she bawled with us. She knew how strong Sophie was, and she was certain that she would pull out of it. So our Sophie hadn't developed enough to open her eyes, and I think that was a blessing as well, because I don't think she knew how tiny she was. She had so much spirit and fight in her. This is my daughter who's here, my 14-year-old. This shows her size. The first time we got to hold our Sophie was when she was taking her last breaths. Like I said before, she contracted Pseudomonas bacteria, which quickly turned septic, and her tiny frame was just too small to fight it off. It only took a couple hours for her to be gone physically from us. As you can imagine, it was a crushing blow. And I wanted to share with you I loved reading stories to her, and it was really neat because at first those machines felt like they were in the way of me and my baby, but the nurses taught me that those machines could let me know how she was responding because I couldn't hold her. And her stats would just calm down when she could hear me or when I'd read her stories. And one of our favorite books was called Peanut. It was written by another micro-preemie mom. And I wanted to share a poem from that. Little baby, I understand. I feel like this applies to these babies who were aborted because I believe that they will have a second chance. Little baby, I'm saying this to my Sophie, but also to all of these people, all of these infants that are humans. I understand that life never goes exactly as planned, and that something so little can be something so grand. My plans may have changed, but remaining at hand. Forever my baby, my heart will expand. I love everything about you. I do. I love everything about my precious baby. And I'm so grateful that I know that, and I feel her with us. And I share Sophie's story today. This is my first time at a pro-life march. And I wanted to thank you all. You've all been so welcoming, and thank you all for your passion. And I share my Sophie story, even though this has been hard for me to do in a public place, because I want people to know that every life does matter, and that even a 23-week-old infant can have an impact that's far-reaching and strong. I will close with the words that I just got from one of her primary nurses, and she says, "My beautiful little Sophia, so much life, fight, and beauty for one so small. And all of the babies that we're fighting for are just like my Sophie."